Welcome back and thank you for staying with News Desk. Now, today marks the 6th anniversary since the 2nd of April 2015's heinous terror attack at the Garissa University, where 148 people, mainly students, were brutally killed. However, as we remember this unfortunate event, Kenya's resilience and solidarity to terrorism is a global success story. In line of remaining resilient, #147 is not just a number, has resurfaced on Twitter in remembrance of the terror attack victims. We now want to have this conversation. We're joined in by Professor Steve Ouma, who is the director of Malaika Foundation on Kenya's resilience story on war against terror. Thank you very much, Prof, for joining us here on News Desk, and happy Good Friday. Maybe you can tell us, 6 years down the line and so many other years as Kenya has been fighting terror, how far are we?
Thank you very much for inviting me in, and indeed, happy Good Friday to you as well. And we know that it is 6 years ago, but the wounds are still very fresh to many families, to many members of the Garissa community, and we always share our solidarity with them. Now, in terms of the steps that have been taken, you must remember that when the attack happened, 9 months later, we were able to reopen the university. And that was a huge step, because one of the things that the terror groups want is that they want us to subdue, they want us to say they have won. So the action of reopening the university 9 months later was a huge success and a show of resilience for our people. But more practically, what has happened is that we have seen an expansion of multiple actor strategy to countering violent extremism in Kenya. Garissa, for example, now has a county CVE forum, which brings together all stakeholders to try and collectively prevent and counter violent extremism, which is a good step in terms of being prepared, but also insulating ourselves from infiltration.
All right, so then what gaps need to be tightened as we know Kenya remains more prepared for terror attacks?
Well, 3 things need to be tightened. First of all, we need to make sure that this remains a multi-stakeholder frontier. There's a security component to it, but there's also a huge social component to it. Second, and most important, we must remain our brothers' keepers, because as you've seen, people who prepare, who organize and execute these attacks live in our neighborhood. We must all be vigilant, because if you're not vigilant, then we will be infiltrated. And lastly, it's very important for us to have a coherent national strategy, not only of preventing attacks, but also of disengaging those among our youth who abandon the attackers' line and come back home. A proper disengagement strategy will help us to keep up the park and be safe.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Steve Ouma, Director at Malaika Foundation, for just taking time to comment on that. Of course, we keep on remembering those 148 lives that were lost in that terror attack and all the other terror attacks. May their souls continue resting in eternal peace. Now, back to Easter, ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi has challenged the Ministry of Health to give clarity on the emerging confusion and controversy around the vaccines being administered in the Kenyan environment, particularly the AstraZeneca and the Sputnik 5 vaccines. Musalia has